Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're all safe and healthy, and we appreciate your spending some time with us today. I'm familiar with a lot of the people who are joining today, but for those new folks, I'm Isaac Brown. I lead the Industrial Tech Group here at Landmark Ventures. Now, we have a lot of good stuff to pack into about 30 minutes, so I just want to get started here. And throughout the conversation, feel free to submit any questions via the Q&A box, and we'll cover them towards the end. Now, we've done a couple webinars on the industrial subscription economy, this idea that industrial equipment manufacturers and service providers are delivering new services and new business models. And for our third program today, we want to focus on the concept of value creation. How can all members of the value chain ensure that they achieve value during digital transformation, whether it's the OEM or the service provider or the end user operator? So that's what we want to cover today, and let's find out. To that end, I'd like to introduce our panelists. We've got Stefan, who's the Chief Value Officer for Thales Group. Thales is one of the largest producers of electronic systems for aerospace, defense, and the transportation markets. And we've also got Ganeet, who's Chief Revenue Officer for Relayer. Relayer is an IoT and AI company that helps industrial OEMs and service providers go to market with digital products and new business models. Now, guys, if you can just briefly introduce yourselves, maybe just tell us a tiny bit about your roles, 30 seconds each, and then we'll get into it. That would be great. Stefan, do you mind kicking us off with a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. I'm Stefan Liozu, and I'm the Chief Value Officer of the Thales Group. What is a Chief Value Officer? I'm the person in charge of making sure that we create value, quantify value, and deliver value to our customers in the Thales Group. So that includes from understanding the concepts of value all the way to pricing strategies to capture that value. And about 50% of my role is supporting our digital transformation and making sure that value there is also created and delivered to our customers.
Awesome. Thanks, Stefan. Ganeet?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stefan. And it's really good to be on the panel with you. We've had some really fascinating conversation and absolutely love your books about value. And, I lead the commercial operations of what used to be a small venture-backed company, which is now the largest, a technical arm of the largest reinsurance company in the world, Munich Re. And for us, we've totally pivoted our business model to be gain share, value share. So when I think of revenue for Relayer, it has to come with creating value for our partners and customers. So it's a topic very close to my heart. I spent about a couple of decades before this in enterprise software and hardware companies. And a lot of times we did not think of value. We thought of, product sales, routing, switching, databases. So happy to be here and look forward to this chat. And thank you for hosting us, Isaac.
Thank you, guys. So let's just start with a big picture question. How can industrial enterprises ensure that they achieve strong value and ROI during transformation? Let's start there. Who wants to jump on that one?
Yeah, so I'll start, and I tell you, this is my daily bread. In a lot of the time, digital transformations are not robust enough when we are discussing making a short-term impact. So obviously, we're looking at the hockey stick. In 5 years from now, we'll have billions, and 10 years from now, will be even better. But I look at what's happening right now in the world and the pressure for not only cash flow preservation, but also better investment and greater ROI, that we put on typically the marketing team, the manufacturing team, the maintenance teams. And I think the digital transformation office is not immune from that pressure. And right now, I can guarantee you that we need to focus on selecting the right programs as part of the transformation and making sure that these programs deliver value, not only for us, but for the customers, the partners, the distributors that are involved in the ecosystem, and then deliver a payback. And that requires a lot of rigor and discipline in managing the digital transformation programs, and moving away from a shotgun approach where we're going to have a pipeline of lots of different programs that are maybe theoretical in nature, to more practical, and be willing to really do things differently, to kill projects quickly, to really invest in and make better bets on. So I believe it's a radical change in the way a portfolio digital programs have to be managed, and how that impact needs to be at the heart of, and I'm not saying like pure EBIT, for example. I'm saying, maybe just sales revenue, for example, having sales revenue and start there, and eventually, because we know that these programs are not going to make money for a while. So, but too many times we see not only programs that cannot commercially be launched, but less alone scaling. So it needs to be a new reality in the post-COVID era.
Yeah, Stefan, I agree. And let me add something, and I'll actually ask you a question right back. I think what you said is right. I firmly believe companies need to stop thinking of ROI, right? Because ROI is a really old tool in my mind. It's important. It's one of the KPIs. But I think, like you said multiple times, we need to start thinking of the value creation. And, I'll give you an example, and I'd love to get your thoughts. And, there's also a question on how you price these things, right? But before you price these things, I'll take a simple example where everybody would understand. Let's think of tool making equipment, right? Machines, which CNC machines, metal laser cutting, milling, grinding, whatever, like standard stuff, right? And, for ages, when I talk to the CEOs, they've always increased their feature functionality and how well their product runs for a very long time. And, they can talk about value, but they finally compete on features and price, right? And this because they have very little aftermarket services and share. They can't really monetize the operations and O&M of these assets. And I think, the first thing everybody needs to do is find out what's the value pool that you're enabling. In this case, it's a no-brainer. I'm sure everybody will agree that unpredictable downtime, just as an example, like one value pool, is super important, right? And if 99% of the businesses can figure out how to do that, they can capture value. They will have ROI. They will make money. What do you think? Is that an approach to think about? And
well, so multiple points to answer this. First of all, the reduction of downtime is not a new concept. It's been going on with condition-based monitoring and and offline, online. So if a company today does not even look at this, it would be rare. So that means that it's semi-commoditized as far as the approach is concerned, and with advanced maintenance programs and good training programs of operators, you could get to a certain level, right? The key is now, how do you get to the next step, which is really connecting your machines and using data to really predict the wear and tear and all these things, and the value is tremendous. But you cannot compare. So when you do your value pool, you cannot compare that to the do nothing. We have never done anything before, because that obviously the value is going to be super huge. The value pool may be very big, but chances are any company will have already some very advanced monitoring program, kind of a legacy program. So you really have to compare the value that digital brings versus an advanced already, efficiency planning process. And still, I think the value will be great as long as you obviously put everything in control. You have good training of the operators on how to use the machines, and you keep it simple. I think keeping it simple for everyone to understand in the operations, to install, to manage, to track, and then to improve is key. No doubt, there is value to be captured, and you look at what's published on predictive maintenance, on operational efficiency. We're talking 20-30%, on average. It's a huge savings. I mean, it's. I wish just 5% would be great. You get into 20%.
That's a really good point. And sorry, Isaac, I don't know if we'll get back to you today. Just trigger a lot of thoughts.
I'm going to take us even farther off course with my next question. So keep going. Yeah.
So you said 20%. Let's say 20% is the value we can bring, or anyone can bring to the machine side. How much of that should we capture? How do you think of the capture of pricing?
Well, so generally speaking, companies will go like, and they say, well, maybe I can get 10%, maybe. So Other times it's a 50-50 split, you know, where it's a fair distribution of sharing, you know. So let's say we can save a customer, $500,000 a year for their entire footprint. And we're going to say, well, we're going to pass on 250 to you, and we're going to keep 250 through a premium mechanism or a subscription or whatever we decide as a pricing model. And obviously pricing is critical to make sure we capture these. Not forgetting that you need to have distributors in there if you're working through distributors, so they need to have a piece of the action. So let's keep that in mind. You know, otherwise, we're going to have a rebellion out there. Now, I came up with I would say, so there are techniques to better quantify the sharing mechanism. I came up with a spreadsheet with about 50 moderators, what I call the value pool moderators, where some are positive, some are negative, and then it will help you kind of a position your sharing level based on intensity of competition, you know, the level of differentiation you have, how credible your story is, have you done pilots before, you know, and then also internal moderators, because a lot of the time the sales leadership or some management, you know, lack the courage to charge a higher price. So they just minimize the price because of the, like the fear of upsetting the customer. So there are external moderators, internal moderators, and then there are pluses and minuses. And then it's a simple spreadsheet, but at the end you need something a bit more rational, that the wet finger methodology, where, you know, you just like guess, you know, I'm going to take 10% premium. And that's an essential, you know, discussion. How much do we want to capture of the value pool, and how well have we demonstrated, you know, that the value pool is real?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Stefan. And I think, you know, doing this for 7 years now, we've been successfully able to capture 40-50% of additional value we've created for our partners, right? And there's not, I'm sure there's science around it, but, you know, being a venture-backed startup, we didn't have much science around it. But I think the science we had was, if we can help anybody make new revenues, so coming back to tool makers, right? We have lots of examples, but, you know, one of the UK companies we work with, or, you know, companies we work in the US, you know, we've helped them create this recurring subscription revenue, which is between 6 to 10% of the cost of their equipment. And more importantly, help them create this as a service revenue model, you know, where consumables are in, everything else is in, which can actually increase the value share by 40, 50, 60%. And we want X% of that. And we've actually never gotten a pushback. We have gotten pushback to prove that this can work, but we've never actually got pushback on the revenue shares, which is very interesting, you know, from our perspective.
This is you raised a good point. I mean, first of all, Relayer is really going all in, and, you know, and I think they are putting together credible business cases, and they're guaranteeing outcome, you know, and that's a big difference, because you bring the confidence to your customers about, hey, we're going to do it because we've done it before, and that confidence aspect is huge. And if you come in and say, yeah, we think it's here, and then by the way, here's your price, you know, and the customer's like, oh boy, these guys don't know what we're talking about. The second point is, you need to track what, you know, you need to be able to put your existing contracts into tracking mechanism, which is calculating a realized value for the customers, and be able to track these so you can use that as credible referencing for other customers. So you have to have a mechanism to track post-launch, you know, and during scaling, the continuous savings that you bring to the customer, so that you could use that and say, hey, you know, it's a reality. And by the way, you approve of the numbers. You know, I didn't make the numbers up. You know, I saved you $2 million last year. And then you use that for, you know, as you prospect and sell to other accounts, you could say, hey, we have 20 accounts that's all saved between 1.8 and 2.2 million. And wow, it's super convincing, right?
That was good, guys. I think there was a lot. There was a lot in there. So I would just be interested to hear. I'm going to skip ahead to what I think is the hardest question to answer of all of these ones, just because I think it's really interesting. So obviously, you guys do this stuff because you make money doing it, right? You wouldn't do it if you didn't make more money doing it. And your customers buy these services from you because they make or save money doing it, right? And then there's probably other people who are also making or saving money who are involved. So in your example, when you help a machine tooling company go to market with digital products and services, their customers are saving money. That OEM is making more money, and then you're making a bunch of money getting a cut of it. How can everyone make money at the same time? If somebody's saving money and a bunch of people are making money, where is it coming from?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Let me take a first stab at that, and then I'd love to get your thoughts. I think there's only two elements here, Isaac, which is a very good point, right? Look, you have to create value to capture value, right? Number one. So it's a fundamental of vertical integration, or any integration for that matter, right? We're talking about. Mm-hmm. So OEMs are forward integrating, service providers and distributors are trying to backward integrate, right? So like I said, there's only two ways we've seen that you can actually make money. One is there's actually true inefficiencies in the process. So there is a true win-win-win, right? Because if there is inefficiencies and you can remove these inefficiencies, there is lower TCO for the end customer. Partners make more money. You as a machine tool maker make more money, right? So we see a few examples of that, not too many, but a few examples of inefficiencies. That's one axis. The only other axis, like you said, is you got to eat someone's lunch, right? So you got to eat someone else's lunch, and you rather be the one eating the lunch, right? For our OEMs, a lot of our OEMs, metal laser cutting is a great example. They're forward integrating, and they are trying to eat the distributor and service providers, lunch. Whereas the services companies are backward integrating and saying, give us all your maintenance spend, and doesn't matter what the OEM is. A classic example publicly on our website is a company called Flanders, which services every OEM's motor, right? When they do motor as a service, you actually don't care whether it's a Siemens motor or an ABB motor or whatever motor, right? Because you care about the performance of that asset. So I think there is some eating of this lunch going on. Surprisingly, I wouldn't say one of them is more than the other. We see examples of both. We see examples of OEMs forward integrating and service providers backward integrating. But that's how I see it, right? I don't know, Stefan, what do you think?
Well, I think it's it all starts with a business model, and if your business model is going to be very disruptive, then yes, potentially you could create a big splash in the ecosystem, and then take some players out, forward or backward integrate. But you have to be careful, because if you're a manufacturer and you start competing against your distributors and upsetting all the supply chain, you may feel the consequences. If you're a totally new startup, then you have less to worry about. I think for me, it comes back to the how much value are you creating? Is your differentiation very strong, or is it just a me too and the same as other players? Because at the end, you have to give an incentive for customers to switch to something. And if incentive is not there, they're going to look at you and say, yeah, you're just another equipment as a service company, or you're just another IoT guy. I'm not going to switch, right? So to be able to make the changes, you need to have enough value in the pool to be able to give incentives to partners, distributors, and then even end user to switch, right? So if you make $100 of value, you're not going to do this for $20. But if you make $100,000 or $2 million of value, then there is definitely, you can get paid and then pay commissions, or kind of make sure that everybody in the value chain is getting compensated. So that concept of incentive to change, to switch to another solution, is important. And the more disruptive the solution is in an industry, the more you're going to have to pay incentives, because the players do not change just for the pleasure of changing. It is fairly disruptive for them to change to away from an ownership model to a consumption model for them, and then to convince them to go outside and talk to their customers to do this. It's kind of a Gunit, I'm sure you agree, it's kind of a process to change, and the mindset needs to be modified. And so if there is a lot of money to be made, then they'll change. If there is a little money, what's in it for me?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think there's a question in the chat that says, what advice would you offer to customers setting out on this path, right? And I think Stefan said it really well. I'll summarize in 3 points, Stefan, and tell me if this is correct, right? Number one, find out how big this is and how important this is and what your differentiation is, right? So number one, and we'll give you some examples of value metrics, so I'd love for Stefan to give you some examples of that, but that's number one. Find out if there's a need, right? Number two, this is a journey, and this journey means there is a cultural mind shift change, there's an incentive change, your processes need to be changed, but that is why don't go and do a freaking pilot, right? because, the thing with a pilot is you build a hammer and then you go find a nail, right? And pilot is what it is. You find the best technology or the smartest way to solve a problem. So you build a hammer. You may not need to, right? Let's find out what the value is. Let's find out, really more importantly, what needs to change on both your side and your market side. And then start the journey. And by the way, we never say you cannot start small. You can absolutely start small. But you can start small with the concept that you have to have a commercial sharing and a commercial readiness. Because otherwise, McKinsey says this very well, less than 30% of the pilots make it to roll out. But that's not because you're doing something wrong in the pilot. You just have a mindset of a pilot, right? That is never a mindset of a journey to succeed, right? So I don't know what you think of that, Stefan, and the value metrics.
Well, first of all, I tell you that, some of these opportunities and solutions have been around for 20 years. You look at IoT. IoT has been around for 20 years, right? So it's not new, and it's fairly off the shelf. There's plenty of commercial platforms. So if you go see a customer and you want to sell an IoT solution, then, if a customer say, "Oh, I'm not sure, I want to do a pilot," say, dude, it's been around for 20 years, and I can put together something in 2 weeks or in 90 days we're operational. What do you mean the pilot? There's plenty of, case studies. Now, if you do something totally radical, totally new innovation, and obviously you're going to have a pilot of some sort. But I agree that being in pilot mode is tricky. And right now we need to bypass that and accelerate the process to be able to scale and capture the value, and especially if the value pools are very big and you've done clearly your good homework, then you should be able to convince outside of the procurement teams, because the procurement is always very complicated to deal with, the actors, the decision makers, and the users to move forward. But you need to, you need to do your homework. And, I wrote a couple of pieces on that. How do you prepare a really good pilot strategy, pretty much avoiding getting in pilot mode. So, and it's a question of you have to do your homework and preparation and do your good documentation and move forward and be a bit aggressive. So, or assertive.
So one question on that, Stefan, and Amit asked this on the chat too, but, give us some examples. For me, the biggest example we're seeing is, new subscription revenues as a value pool, bundling everything together. We see CapEx to OpEx, so people want the whole value to actually be OpEx versus CapEx. But, you've seen a lot more industrial companies. Maybe give us a few examples of value metrics, value pools that you see out there.
Well, yeah, a lot of the industrial companies have, moved towards that, subscription, I would say subscription mode, subscription-based pricing, subscription-based business models. I don't think it's going at the speed of light like, the B2C world or even generally SaaS in general. So, and I'm not sure if it's, I think there is a lot of consideration there, including the cash flow impact that has, definitely the finance teams are looking at this and say, well, now is not a good time, but, so, and I see a question in there, what would you do this when, I have the budget to buy the machine up front? Well, subscription is not for everyone. If you're cash rich and you want to focus on profit, then negotiate a very big discount up front and they'll love you. But if you want predictability, you want to, and it's not a question about you, it's a question about your customers. Some customers may want to move into subscription. So where a lot of industrial companies struggle is, I would say, is understanding what is as a service. And sometimes they want to, they want to do hybrid with, you pay me 50% up front and then the rest in a subscription. That is not as a service. That defeats the purpose of being as a service, right? And, as a service is purely as a service. You're taking control and you're delivering something in a recurring format. And then with everything that goes with it, so there is plenty of examples out there of companies that have actually didn't want to deal with the complexity of switching internally with a, kind of a subscription model, and they acquire startups and they keep them separately. So you have Boeing as one, Thales as a couple, BASF, as a couple. So, and they want to keep them separate so they can be nimble and flexible and agile and do all kinds of different innovation and pricing. It's something they might not be able to do internally, or it may take a little time. So it's one way to market. We see a lot of software around the product that are offered, to enable and empower the products. That is, Sandvik has some of those, Honeywell, Siemens has a lot of them. So, and that's pretty easy, I would say, to do, because software as a service has been done forever, and I would say 75% of companies are moving to a SaaS model. So this is less complication, and you see a lot of good examples out there of software as a service as part of the industrial offer. Now, when you get into dedicated, I would say internally dedicated business model around as a service, that's where it gets a little complicated, because where do you host this? Where is it in the organization? So if you don't put it outside as a startup and it's inside, then that's where the complications start. Because you have to integrate the process, the finance, the legal, the ERP, and all that stuff, and then that delays a lot of the. And as a result, you see, I wouldn't say pretty bad subscription, but plain vanilla, or very boring subscription, or subscription that you go on the website and you can't understand them. There's no landing page. There is contact the salesperson for information on the subscription. That defeats the purpose. I mean, the subscription is like, click here, self-service, I buy it, I want it, right? And for me, it tells me that it's not ready. It's not fully commercial when you have to contact someone to buy it. So I think it's a little bit more timid, I would say, in that context of a dedicated, I would say, subscription business model within the core. So plenty of success stories out there, but also, we just finished for the upcoming book next year, a review of 100 case studies of industrial subscriptions, and there is improvements to be made for sure. Definitely some good success stories. I encourage to go see some of the Siemens work, or some of the Thales work, or some of the Sandvik work. Beautiful, landing page and awesome packaging. But generally speaking, we see a real need for improvement there. So I don't know what you feel, Gunit, but we're not as advanced as a B2C or SaaS in general.
Absolutely. And I think, it comes also with a lot of baggage, right? A lot of companies, you said, are very successful, right? And if they're very successful and they have significant market share, what's the momentum to change and go to value, right? So I think I worked at Cisco for a long time. And, today, more than 50% of Cisco's revenue, them as routing and switching, actually comes from as a service. You never thought of that, right? You think of them, I buy a router and I buy a switch from them, right? Or I buy networking gear from them. But I think the transformation is important. And I think that's the key, right? And there was lots of questions actually, and Isaac, you asked that, so I'll close there and see if there are more audience questions. But from my perspective, the value that you capture doesn't have to take any of the distribution channel and partners and intermediaries out of the picture. You can choose who captures how much value, right? Of course, you want to be in the driving seat to see that you actually capture more value either way, backward, forward. But that doesn't mean you can kick, or you want to kick the other person out of the ecosystem, right? It's always the ecosystem approach in the industrial world for sure, not in B2C that much, right? But it's how much value you capture, I think, is with the first mover. And I'll leave it there, but that's just my opinion. But I think the first mover captures the most value and then chooses how much value is distributed across the ecosystem.
And Gunit, I've definitely seen it go both ways. I've seen OEMs or component suppliers use digital as a tool to eat the lunch of their distributors and take them out of the value chain. And I've also seen very successful strategies that were focused on channel and partner enablement, right? Enabling your resellers and distributors to make more money, and then you become the preferred supplier. So it works both ways. I'm a cynic. I'm generally of the opinion that it's a zero-sum game and somebody's lunch is getting eaten. But I agree with you that there are different ways it can play out. So we're coming up on time, but I want to we'll run a few minutes over. I want to do something quickly here. We've been talking about value creation, value pools, value metrics. Most of what we talked about has been a little bit general. I'd love to just kind of finish with a more granular approach to it. So Stefan, I'd love to hear from you about a digital product or service that Thales took to market, how that created value for the customer, and then how Thales generated revenue from it. And I know that some of those details might be sensitive, but with whatever level of granularity you can talk through that, I think it would be really useful for everyone to just hear specifically how that can play out.
Yeah, you know, we leverage the typical benefits of you know, as a service. So for example, we in the UK we had drone as a service for you know, some very large institution, you know, European institution that could not afford to buy drones up front, and we say typical you know, pay by the hour, or you know, all inclusive maintenance. So this is well done. If you type drone by the hour, you'll see the Thales UK, you know, already did that many years ago, so that's not new. We have a bunch of startups that are in Thales that are very interested. One of them is Aviobook, and Aviobook sells pretty much flight management systems to pilots. And instead of carrying the catalogs, and you know, you see them with a big suitcase, you know, carrying all these manuals and things that they have to read, it's all fully automated. And then obviously it's lighter, it's an iPad, and then but once you're in, then you could sell subscription to other things like traffic control, you know. So some of them are included, and some of those are, you know, additional that the pilot may want to see. And we sell per plane per year a fee, a traditional subscription per plane per year, and we signed up dozens and dozens of. But here, imagine that, you know, not only on the experience of the pilot, but also the weight in the plane, because you know, 50 pounds of paper that times two, you know, times the flying hours, it's huge on fuel. And airlines are very sensitive, or used to be very sensitive when they flew about fuel expenses. So, you know, that's one that's very, you know, that's working very well. We have another one called Aero Police, which is pretty much an alert system for police when there are hot activities out there, and then people report it. And that's a subscription for cities and municipalities. And that's working pretty well. And those are standalone startups. So, I mean, we have lots of examples in Thales right now after 3-4 years of digital transformation. You know, they are coming out, and you know, we run into the, you know, the typical scaling, you know, challenges, and you know, it's normal. I think it's part of any innovation. But I would say, generally speaking, we have matured, and we have graduated from the initial chaos of launching all these, and then and I think we're doing much better than 3 years ago. And my role is really to help them at packaging, modeling, the business model, the value props, and as much as I can. So we're pretty happy where we are, and delivering value for customers, and we do value pools, and we do subscription pricing.
Yeah, one thing to add, Stefan, I know we're running over, but I think I just wanted to add to that. I think you asked a very good question, right? I think, by the way, there's enough examples out there. Compressors, you know, everything which, you know, he said, there's, you know, packaging machines, you know, machine tools, mining, you know, we see drag lines, etc. So all kinds of examples, right? But I think the important thing is people haven't, or a lot of organizations haven't reached scale. And the question to everybody in the audience who here was interested is, do you want to be the case study, or do you want to listen to other people's case studies, right? So you really have to lead the market here. And I think all of us are trying to do that. But I think it's the market where the fast movers will actually totally, I mean, Rolls-Royce. I mean, Rolls-Royce wasn't looking for case studies, right? They came in and totally said power by the hour is what we're going to do. Okay, it took them a decade and took them a lot of changes, but it's 67 or 80% of their, you know, revenue comes from power by the hour, which is bad right now, but they've done really well, right? And they will come back when the market kind of comes back up. So I think just the concept of first movers is important here, right?
Yeah, and that's what I nicely and kindly remind the finance community and in companies, saying, you know, if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. And do you want to be in control of your destiny? And you want to do, you know, establishing the flag in your area, you know, in your markets, and be the first one, even if you goof up a little bit and it takes you a little time to do it, you know, you're the inventor or the pioneer. Now we could say, well, the cash flow, blah, 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 but then someone else is going to do it. And then that's it. The race is on, man. It's,
Yeah. No, it
My
is.
favorite Jeff Bezos quote is, if you're not moving fast enough and breaking stuff, you're not moving fast enough, right? So you got to move fast enough and break things and kind of learn from them and keep going on, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of these companies get used to sitting back doing what they've done, and they're still making money, right? A lot of people have these cushy jobs, but that will only last so long, right? You gotta take a risk. You gotta innovate. You gotta break stuff. And I like the way you put it. You're either going to be making case studies or you're going to be, watching other people's webinars. So, I think we're a little over. So I think we should wrap on that note, guys. That was a great session, very insightful about value creation and value pools for digital transformation. We'll get this recording up on the web. We'll share it with everybody later on. I'll send a recap email to everybody. Thank you, everyone in the audience. If anybody would like to connect with Stefan or Ganit, just send me an email and I'll broker it. But we really appreciate everybody's time, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Stay safe out there, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.